Hey everyone, Kyle Walker here. If you love cars, fixing things, or just want to understand your vehicle better, you're in the right place. I share hands-on tips, smart driving advice, and straight-up car talk without the fluff. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and stick around till the end. You don't want to miss what's coming up. Let's get into it.
Cars with engines equipped with an injector power system prevail on the highways. At the same time, due to the high level of reliability of cars produced in 80-90s, it is still possible to meet quite a few old-timers that are equipped with a carburetor. All motors were equipped with carburetors because the power unit itself is not adapted to create a fuel-air mixture burning in the chamber. Carburetors played a major role in the development of automobile construction and underwent many transformations, improving throughout the century of their use. But as a result, they had to be displaced in favor of more functional injector systems of fuel supply to internal combustion engines, which became widespread at the turn of XXI centuries. Despite the fact that now the mechanisms are not very popular, they are not forgotten and continue to be used on the engines of motorcycles, stationary, generator, boat, and other units of technical devices. What is a carburetor? Not every new car owner knows what a carburetor looks like, and in general, what it is and what its purpose is, but in the past the invention allowed to move far ahead in the field of automobile construction, reducing fuel costs and increasing the performance of the internal combustion engine. The carburetor is a unit of the internal combustion engine power supply system, which prepares a combustible mixture by mixing carburation fuel with oxygen and doses it to the engine cylinders, where ignition takes place. In simple words, the combustion process requires the creation of a fuel-air mixture in certain proportions, and the carburetor doses the necessary amount of incoming air and liquid. An overdose of fuel or, on the contrary, an excessively lean mixture will provoke malfunctions in the power unit. Thanks to the creation of a simple carburetor mechanism, the problem of preparing the correct mixture was solved. As a rule, the attachment is located on top of the engine and is widely used on various types of motors. The evolution from a bulky, poorly regulated design to a more perfect device allowed mass application of the mechanism on serial cars. The latest round of carburetor injection development has been electronically controlled mechanisms. They include several solenoid valves functioning with the help of an electronic control device. There are three main varieties of carburetors. Carburetor, no longer in use due to the imperfection of the mechanism. Diaphragm needle. Simple type, which are equipped with lawn mowers, gasoline cutters, piston airplanes, etc. Float, massively installed on cars of the second half of XX century. The diaphragm needle mechanism includes several chambers separated by diaphragms, which are firmly fixed by a rod. One of its ends is a needle, which locks the fuel supply valve when the device is functioning. The float carburetor is multifaceted in its design. The basis of the device is the float chamber, responsible for the inflow of fuel, and the mixing chamber, which forms the mixture for ignition. The mechanism includes many metering systems, in which there are appropriate elements for rationing, fuel, and air channels. This type of device has one universal love and the greatest distribution due to the best indicators of the formed mixture and ensuring the stability of the motor. Why do you need a carburetor? The answer to the question, why do you need a carburetor, is already contained in the definition of the mechanism. Its task is to create a fuel-air mixture. Let's take a closer look at what the carburetor does, which is equipped with an internal combustion engine on cars. Fuel, poured into the engine of the car, is not ignited from a spark. For the reaction, it is necessary to have oxygen. Thus, equipping with a carburetor, injector on current car engines, allows you to feed into the cylinder's finely dispersed fuel air mixture, easily ignited by a spark. Mixing must necessarily take place in certain proportions, which differ depending on the engine operation mode. Reducing the volume of air, i.e., enrichment of the composition, leads to a loss of the charge's ability to ignite, filling the plugs and cylinder malfunction already. At a ratio of 1:5, excessively enriched mixture is no longer ignited by the spark. In the opposite situation, where there is an overabundance of oxygen, it is said about the depletion of the charge. Functioning on the depleted mixture reduces the performance of the motor, and the consequences of its regular use are quite serious. With excessive depletion, when the ratio reaches the values of 1:21, ignition does not occur. It is not uncommon to observe white deposits on the plugs, ignition misses, burned valves, deformation of pistons, and other troubles. Find the balance of proportions in different modes of operation of the motor is very important. So from the loads on the unit will depend on the ratio of fuel to air. Read also, Lexus cars. Who and where they are produced. Since the end of 19th century, carburetors serve to create the right mixture. They have undergone many changes throughout the XX century, but progress does not stand still, and today the carburetor mechanisms have been replaced by more advanced and reliable injectors. Chipsets, or systems of independent injection of fuel-air mixture, are under the control of onboard computer. They cause more accurate than carburetor fuel dosage in different modes of engine operation, and in addition, the exhaust indicators meet the requirements of environmental standards. Principle of carburetor operation. Carburetors differ in modification, manufacturer, as well as the stage of evolution, but in general they function on the same principle. To understand how the mechanism is arranged, consider the example of the simplest float device, unencumbered by a lot of additional elements. The main components of the carburetor are the float and mixing chamber. Let's see what else the carburetor consists of. Float, its locking needle, jets, atomizer, venturi tube, throttle plate. The task of the float chamber is to dose fuel and maintain its level in the system, ensuring stable fuel supply under various, including extreme loads. Inside the assembly, there is a cavity where the float is placed, connected with a needle valve. When the fuel is consumed, the float and the valve are lowered, which opens the channel for fuel flow, but as soon as the required volume has entered the chamber, the float and the valve rise, blocking the way to the flow of liquid. In this way, a stable fuel level is maintained. Mixing chamber, which follows from the name, is engaged in mixing fuel and air, quickly entering through the diffuser, a narrowed section of the assembly. The atomizer is the connecting link between the chambers. One end is equipped with a jiggler, which has a through hole and provides fuel in certain dosages. The second end is led into the diffuser. How the carburetor works. Gasoline enters through the fuel line running from the gas tank to the float chamber, then is metered by a nozzle located at the bottom of the chamber and reaches the atomizer. The fuel is atomized in the mixing chamber by means of atomizer. Led to the diffuser, the air mass flows through the air intake filter into the mixing chamber. The air, accelerating in the diffuser, generates rarefaction in the atomizer section, due to which the liquid is sucked from the float chamber and the air mass is mixed with the fuel. The mixture is formed at every stage, from air intake to entering the chamber. The finished mixture is fed into the engine cylinders, where it is ignited by the plugs. Of course, this is not all that a carburetor consists of. Models of the last generation, in addition to the main elements, had many auxiliary devices and worked under the control of electronics. Now carburetor injection is used on engines for special equipment, because the equipment with injectors in this case is not reasonable, due to their unsuitability for severe operating conditions. If the mechanical carburetor is unpretentious on this account, it is easy to clean if necessary. The electronic injection systems are quite capricious and are highly susceptible to the negative effects of moisture and dirt. In addition, injector nozzles are finicky about the quality of the fuel used. Read also, where accurate cars are made. Why do you need a choke on the carburetor? The mechanism of the carburetor system includes a throttle valve that regulates the air supply. The position of the throttle valve determines the volume of the mixture supplied to the cylinders, therefore the nature of the design provides a link with the accelerator pedal so that more air and fuel is supplied when it is pressed. Starting the power unit on cold requires an enriched mixture, which requires a larger volume of fuel than in the standard mode. In the past, some cars were equipped with a control knob on the dashboard, popularly known as the choke, making it easier for the driver. When pulling the lever, the flap is closed, limiting the air supply to the mixing chamber, which creates a rarefaction. Fuel is drawn and more, resulting in an enriched mixture, which is required to start the engine at sub-zero temperatures outside. The carburetor starter control knob is returned to its previous position after the engine is started and warmed up, and the choke is controlled as standard. In most cars with a carburetor fuel supply system, This element for creating a more saturated fuel-air mixture is absent. Many manufacturers have automated the process, which eliminates the need to pull the control knob to cold start the engine. Pros and cons of a carburetor. Mechanical carburetors have many advantages, and the fact that they are no longer used on modern cars is justified not so much by economy, because a well-adjusted mechanism is not less economical than an injector, but by the low level of environmental friendliness, which has recently been given maximum attention in the development. Carburetors are unable to provide an individual mixture for each flash, while injector systems performing distributed injection function in this way. However, the positive aspects of the carburetor are the weaknesses of the injector, so there are still improvements to be made. Atomization of the entire chamber ensures the use of the entire volume of fuel, thus saving fuel, as well as easy starting in different climatic conditions, simple design, easy maintenance, repairability, low cost of work, and the ability to carry out repairs independently. If the appropriate tools are available, unpretentiousness to fuel quality, maintaining operability in harsh conditions, in contact with water or mud, no dependence on electric power supply. Carburetors also have disadvantages: the need to customize the device, dependence on climatic conditions, formation of condensate that freezes on the body at low temperatures, overheating in extreme heat, and drop in engine performance due to fuel vaporization. The need for periodic cleaning of the carburetor, toxicity of exhausts that do not meet modern environmental standards. Despite the active displacement of carburetors from the market, many old cars equipped with carburetor system are still quite alive and continue to wheel on domestic roads. In addition, for a huge number of devices for a long time will be relevant engines with carburetor injection. In conclusion, a carburetor is a vital component in many internal combustion engines, responsible for mixing air and fuel in the right proportions for efficient combustion. By understanding its basic functions, such as the principles of airflow, fuel delivery, and the role of various parts like the float and jets, we gain insight into how this mechanical device contributes to engine performance. Whether in classic cars or small engines, the carburetor remains a fascinating example of engineering that has stood the test of time. Thank you for watching, and we hope you now have a clearer understanding of what a carburetor is and how it works.